Please do not put your questions in the chat, but please do put your observations, your insights, any aha moments as you listen to our panelists. We would really love to archive all the contributions coming forth this evening. And you know, oftentimes it happens after the event is over that new thoughts come to mind, whether insights or recommendations for the Retired Ministers Committee for next year's event. And if that happens, please email me directly. My address will also be in the chat. We welcome all comments. So all panelists have chosen their own topic or topics on which to deliver a 10-minute presentation that best represents their personal growth experience as a minister. The program is going to be divided into 3 parts. The first being a general question for the first 3 panelists. It's going to be a fire round, so they only have 1 minute to answer. And then each one will be introduced and deliver their presentation. After the first 3 speakers have finished, there will be time for Q&A, about 10 minutes. Then we will take a 5-minute break. And then the second group of panelists will also have to answer a fire round question, and then each be introduced and make their presentations again of 10 minutes each. We will close tonight by sharing of any insights or takeaways that you may have gained, any further questions that may need to be asked, and then the panelists have kindly consented to do a chamber prayer for everyone, symbolizing, if you were, the passing of the torch. Okay, so please note to collect your questions as we go along, and then there will be 2 or 3 times in which to ask those questions. So I'm just going to just take a look at everyone here. Everyone's in the room. We're ready to start. Okay. All right, so we're going to begin. Somebody is not muted. Maybe somebody can handle that. All right, so our first 3 panelists up, we'll begin with a fire round question. Our panelists are Dr. Andrea Acevedo, Dr. Patty Lukenbach, and Dr. David Alt. So are you ready? Here we go. You know, we try our very best to walk in integrity with principle and be mindful to let us lead us in all challenging situations, especially with those with whom we work closely. Now, we all know that there can be a bit of a star quality complex that happens. You know, sometimes it's ministers being high on their own supply. That's a joke, okay? But it can also develop over time as a result of being constantly put on a pedestal. This is almost inevitable as a spiritual leader with great influence. So here is your question. How do you approach boundaries in the student-teacher relationship? So I'll go to my first panelist, Dr. Andrea, if you would answer that, please.
Oh, geez. Okay. I have a minute. Boundaries are incredibly important. As a therapist and a minister, one of the things that I do is I establish a camaraderie and a collegial presence with whoever I'm working with, if it's a student or a congregant or whoever. And when there's a tendency to be put on a pedestal, which does happen all the time, I'm the first to say, and I'm going to speak about this later, that, hey, you know, this is a perfection-free zone. And so you may experience that I make mistakes. Hello, I'm human, and so are you. And so I'm going to give you the space to make mistakes as a student so that we can learn from them, and you need to give me the space as well. So that's what I do.
Thank you very much, Dr. Andrea. All right, Dr. Patty, you're up.
I learned from a great mentor that maybe some of you recognize, Dr. Marjorie Stamm. When I first entered the ministry, she said that student and teacher relationship, she said, just don't take them to lunch. Just be present as a teacher. And that has always worked for me. And I hear what's being said here that, have your boundaries, but be open to love. Just love them. And they have a way of forgiving you. They have a way of loving you even more and just being present with them. But I work as smart as possible as a counselor and as a minister here, not to take them to lunch, if you know what I mean. You don't want to personally get really, really close because you're raising them constantly every day in prayer. And that's what has always worked for me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Patty.
You bet.
Dr. David, how would you answer that question?
My approach is a little bit on the side of polarity. Having had so many boundaries broken, I used to be all in about acquiring whatever a healthy one is, but I've let that go. Those broken boundaries from my past are what I have called growth prompts that I needed. It's like the saying, the obstacle is the path. And so you move towards the possible breach in a boundary, and that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing because we live in this yin-yang dynamic. So a healthy boundary or awareness for me has become not about the other person, but it's about coming to the awareness that everything and everyone is a teacher. So I think of this in terms of prevention energy, something preventative like washing my hands, eating vegetables, exercising is a scientific prevention of self-care. Something preventative around mental, emotional aspects with regards to the safety of my heart can become sticky, in that I might actually be building a wall around my heart under the guise of self-care when all that I'm really doing, and I'm guilty of this, is postponing a fear. And so that fear is my mountain to climb. My master teacher to learn from. So I'm going to have to climb it and learn it sooner or later. So I might as well keep my heart open and welcome it all.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. All right. So now we go into our presentation time. So first up is Dr. Andrea Acevedo. Dr. Andrea. Dr. Andrea actually has been my mentor all the way through since before I graduated. So that goes back to 1997. Dr. Andrea has been a minister for over 35 years, and she is serving, she served first in the Redding, California Religious Science International Church and is now in Bellingham, Washington. She also served for 25 years leading with the teens, creating youth camps for our movement. She became a student of Thich Nhat Hanh in 1997 and has been co-leader of a meditation sangha for the past 7 years. She recently retired from her practice as a marriage and family therapist as the center in Bellingham grew. She was recently honored with the Ernest Holmes Award. Dr. Andrea has chosen to speak on building spiritual community and the importance of creating a perfection-free zone. We all welcome you so much, Dr. Andrea.
Well, here I am, and welcome everybody. I wanted to speak a little bit about the underlying intention that I've had in ministry all along, and it has to do with being raised in Corvallis, Oregon. In Corvallis, at the time that I was young, I was living in an old farmhouse that had become part of the main part of the neighborhoods surrounding the university. And almost every house in my neighborhood had a front porch. And it was very common for neighbors to come up onto the porch. Most of us had porch swings and rocking chairs and catch up with one another at the end of the day or during the weekend. we all knew each other, not well, but we knew that Mr. Ziefley grew pumpkins for the children for Halloween, and that Mrs. Isley was the teacher you didn't want to get in grade school and things like that. And so we had a built-in community of people who knew who we were and who we belonged to, and we knew who they were. We knew that there was a doctor across the back alley in case anything was wrong. And so, you know, in that time, that was not uncommon. But of course, society has shifted gears a lot. And that kind of connection is really not as common these days. And so when I began to contemplate what a spiritual community could do, I realized that one of my intentions was to build that kind of connection between community members so that they would know one another. Maybe not intimately, all of them together, but enough so that they knew each other's lives. They knew each other's children. They knew the teenagers in our community. The children were known in communities so that they were witnessed and celebrated. And the teens, you know, through bake sales and car washes and all the things that we did for them, became part of a multi-generational community of spiritual travelers. To do that, I built an opportunity for people to get involved in lots of different ways. And so what began to happen is we would hold retreats and we would invite people of all sorts to come to these retreats. We made sure that we had children's counselors and teen counselors on hand so that the children had the experience of being together, the teens had the experience of being together. As when the adults were in session, we all ate together. Everyone, including the children, were invited to be part of preparing the meals, serving the meals, cleaning up after the meals. And so it was very much a communal experience. And we did that in every way I could think of, whatever we could do to connect people to one another and to get people to know each other at depth level. We did, and it worked. In the first ministry in Redding is although it's in California, it's a Bible Belt. And it's extremely conservative. And so I had the advantage there of being the only game in town that was accepting of people that were not evangelical Christian Republicans. And so it was actually kind of an oasis for us in Redding for many years, so that people from all different tribes of religious background, societal background, gender orientation, sexual orientation, we were a home for that. And there was a great deal of acceptance and love, as you might imagine. I'm sure you're building the same thing. So I started thinking of this approach as the front porch approach, you know, of becoming a welcoming place for anyone who would show up at the center. So when I arrived 11 years in Bellingham, they had been through an extremely traumatic year and a half of really having a very difficult minister who left abruptly, and there was a lot of acrimony and a lot of there were people outing people on Facebook and saying terrible things, and half of the community had left and was never going to come back. And I didn't know that when I candidated. Nobody mentioned that. I could tell because of the therapist, there was something below the surface that was not being spoken. But really, it was only after I was hired, and this happens to a lot of ministers, just saying, I found out what had happened. And so I realized, well, there's a lot of opportunity here for the front porch approach of building back a community and leading with love. And that, David, what you said about the boundaries is so apropos for this approach, because, you know, it's a leadership with great love. And so it's a opportunity for me to practice compassion all the time. And I do. And compassion, loving kindness, the willingness to sit with people, to listen to them, to acknowledge their journey, to be part of their lives like that is absolutely rich for me. And it also, again, is part of the building and knitting together, the weaving of community. When I came here, because there had been so much really trauma, I brought forward a slogan that I think comes from the recovery movement. I have a lot of people who are friends in recovery, and I learned it from a man who's living in Sebastopol now. His name is Doug Von Koss. And Doug ran parts of the San Francisco Opera for years. And he taught me the phrase, the perfection-free zone. And I began to use it a lot. When I first started here, I started building into the consciousness of this community that this was a perfection-free zone, and that experimentation was going to be the way we did things. So if I wanted to start a second service, I would call it an experiment. And if it didn't work, well, it did work. But if it didn't work, it's a perfection-free zone. That's what you need in order to be creative and build a community that's willing to risk themselves enough to bring their ideas, launch their ideas, and have their ideas in view in a community setting. So, you know, the first time I heard it mirrored back was, I have a wonderful band, but like all bands, every once in a while someone has a bad day. And so years ago, you know, someone was having a bad day and started in the wrong key, and everybody else was in the right key. And they got about, oh, I don't know, like 2 stanzas in, and the person realized they were in the wrong key and stopped, looked out at the audience and said, thank God it's a perfection-free zone, changed their chording, and off they went. You know, and that's what I was hoping for, was this ability to be together and honor the fact that we're all learners. We're learning how to walk a spiritual path. We're learning how to be the best sacred humans we can be. So it's been a real lovely thing to watch that blossom. A long time ago, a man named Reverend Scott, I can't remember his last name, he was in, I think it was Michigan or Wisconsin, and he was telling a story that I have held all these years. And the story went like this. He was at a park and he was watching kids play, and they were playing some kind of game with a ball and kicking the ball, and you had to catch the ball and then you rotated. And a new kid came into the park and was watching him play, and one of the kids looked over and said, hey, come on, come play. But the guy didn't know the rules. And so, you know, his turn came up, he played, and he screwed up. And so all the kids were like, oh man, you screwed up. And then one of the kids said, do-overs, threw the ball back, and the kid got another chance. So I believe in a perfection-free zone where there's lots of do-overs if needed, to help build a community of support and love and compassion. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Andrea. Oh, that's great. Oh, the front porch approach, easier as a founding minister, but perhaps all the more necessary when needing to build back a community, leading by loving kindness and compassion in a perfection-free zone. That was my takeaway. Thank you. So may I remind all of you just to collect your questions, and there will be a time for open dialogue after this first session has concluded. So next up is Dr. Patty Lukenbach. For 30 years, Dr. Patty has specialized in the care and nurturing of those people experiencing deep grief and loss from the constant changes of life. She is a teacher and a psychotherapist specializing in grief support services, psychospiritual growth, and journal writing as a therapeutic adjunct. She has had the honor of facilitating practitioner training with CSL for many years and overseeing the prayer care work at Mile High Church. She is an author of 3 books. She is a Colorado native and has been adopted by the Lakota Nation. Dr. Patty's greatest joy comes from facilitating others in stepping through the portals of life's changes. Please help me welcome Dr. Patty.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be with these great individuals. And I so appreciate it. And I once was told by a great minister, Dr. H. Fred Vogt, he said, Patty, always listen to your congregation as to what they need. And I recognized so many years ago that I don't think we're there any longer, but we were, I think, many years ago, that if someone passed away or if there was a serious illness, or it's kind of like, well, let's just pray and we're just going to kind of get over it. And someone died and they're in a better place. And I started to realize that a lot of these people were still so grieving and needed answers and needed process in the world. My past, when I was a kid, I was dealt with a lot of losses. So I guess that kind of set me on the path many years ago. So I recognize that community, and I love what Dr. Andrea just said about that front porch approach, to be present for others. And I often say to ministerial students that going into the ministry and having a church is not about creating a country club. It's great to come and be together, but it is a lighthouse. And people row their boats into this lighthouse to be repaired. Some of them are repaired and they go back to sea. A lot of us have stayed, and I'm grateful for that. And a lot of our congregation stays. And so to build a strong, caring community was so important for me. And I think it was in 1992, a long time ago now, I wrote a bereavement care manual, and I gave it to home office at the time. I think it sat on the shelf for a while. And then all of a sudden, I think there were some shifts and changes, and we realized as a collective group that grief is a part of our loving. And we are about extending that love and being one with another person. So we dusted that off, and I've given several trainings to different churches in different cities. And I offer that, we call it the morning after. And that's morning. Morning means taking your grief public. And that's well attended. We have a group going right now. We have about 10 people in it, goes for 8 weeks. And it's some intense work. And the people that facilitated, there's times I still facilitate, have been trained to do the work. And we've even had the Denver Police Department send people to our groups. So they're well attended and they really help people. They help people understand where they are in that process. So not to talk the whole time about grief, but we created a care ministry here, and we call it the Compassionate Care and Prayer Ministry. And we put it inside our new sanctuary because we wanted people, when they came into church on Wednesday or Sunday or whenever, to realize that care was a really important part of our community. And so we have the Beyond Divorce, which facilitators are trained to do that. We have one of those groups going right now. We have about 11 people. Being able to redevelop their life and to gather compassion for self and others and step forward in the world through that group. We also have, a compassionate care group where I have a team. And where are those teams? Where do I gather those teams from? I gather those teams from our blessed practitioners. And I would say to all of you who are listening, whether you have a large church like Mile High has always been, or a growing church, I never say small church because we're always growing, a growing church, find a practitioner that's willing to be interested in this work, and so that you as minister don't have to do it all, because we know as ministers there's so much for us to handle and to be with, and to compassion self and others. So create that work with your practitioners. And the practitioners have never failed us. They're just incredible. And so we have such things now as healing light services, where people speaking about the consciousness of the practitioner. Once a month, we have a healing light meditation service, and it is that, it's healing. We also have a trauma group that is facilitated by one of our very fine ministers, Reverend Michelle Scavetta. We also have created, of course, we have our spirituality and recovery, which we now, because of Zoom, are touching people all over the United States and even the world in their change recovery work. We also have an animal and pet ministry. And I don't know if we're the first church, but we had a special pet parade, which is a hoot. We had a blessing of the pets. We had a memorial for those who'd lost their pets, because that's a big loss for people. And we created a special invitation that their pet could become a member of our church. And that sounds kind of crazy, but we had 25 people sign up for their pet to be a member of our community. Now, how we're going to work that is that monthly that pet gets an affirmation and a prayer, and it's just our way to extend our hearts to them. If there's a need, whether a memorial is needed for when the pet passes, that they know that we're here. So there's a lot of ways to reach out to our community and be able to, you know, just find that blessed support for them. So I could tell you all kinds of healing stories that have taken place through our bereavement process, and they'll touch you to the tips of your toes. But I'll share one quickly. One day, it was a Sunday, and someone's looking for me. And they finally found me, and they had this family, and this little family of 3 children. And their mother, the night before, had been murdered in front of them. Oh, such a terrible thing. And so the aunt and uncle, who were members of the church, of course, had the children. The children were taken from the house. One of the little girl didn't even have shoes on. They didn't have their combs or their toothbrushes. And since I do grief work, of course, they found me. And I'll tell you, as ministers, we rely on prayer, don't we? And I just prayed that Spirit would work through me just to be present with these little kids. I called them the little birds sitting on a branch. That's what it felt like. They were like naked little birds just sitting on that branch. And so we talked, and we were honest, and I wasn't afraid to ask them what they were feeling in those moments. Well, the goodness of this story is that they were adopted by the aunt, and that the oldest boy is a member of our teen church, and religious science is changing his life. So I want to just instruct ministers, do not be afraid of a person's pain. Ask them to teach me about your pain. Teach me, because I don't know about your pain. And that's a very compassionate approach, to just be ever so present. So the little birds on the branch have taught me so much. And that's just one of the examples of, you know, a community that cares. And as long as we're known as a center, a spiritual center, we're known as a church. I know we don't refer to church that often. That it's important that we find ways to reach out and care. So there's so many things that I could say about the caring, but once again, I give thanks that we are able to reach out in a wide variety, working with health relationships with people. Our practitioners have created enhancement groups around relationships, around grief, and of course grief, but career and finance. So it's unlimited. And lean into your practitioners, because there's people out there in your centers that have those gifts, and no doubt they want to share. So it's all done with love. And someone said to me, how do you do this work? And I said, it's all done with mirrors, and the mirrors of love. So thank you for your presence today. And it's a wonderful, wonderful discussion that we're having this evening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patty. Oh, man. Listen to your congregation. It's not a country club, but a lighthouse, a safe harbor. Safe harbor where we can understand that grief is a part of our loving and not to be afraid of our pain or other people's pain. And where pets can become members. I love that. I've never heard of that before. Wonderful.
People are loving it.
Ah, so remember everyone that the panelists' contact info is being put into the chat. If you haven't seen it, this is for your convenience, their best contact info. You don't have to scramble to try to find where somebody is in case you wish to connect with them later. Thank you so much. All right, our third and final panelist for this first session before we go on a 5-minute break is Reverend Dr. David Alt. Dr. David continues his quest to breathe integrity into the principle that God is all there is. It's a full-time job that he never sees retiring from. Dr. David resides in Atlanta, Georgia, and has served CSL centers in Granada Hills, California, Mobile, Alabama, and Atlanta, Georgia. He is the recipient of the honorary doctorates of Divine Music and Divinity given by Centers for Spiritual Living, the Be the Change Award given by CSL Geneva and the European Centers, and the inaugural New Thought Walden Award for Social Activism given by the Consortium of All New Thought Organizations. David's been a frequent daily guide contributor for the Science of Mind magazine and is the author of 2 books, Where Regret Cannot Find Me and The Grass is Greener Right Here. He is the founder and executive director of Kaleidoscope Child Foundation, a global education nonprofit that offers sustainable education, fresh water, initiatives, and life skills training to 1,000+ children annually in India, Cambodia, and Guatemala. Dr. David has chosen to speak on the necessary adversary, uncovering our own personal integrity with our fundamental principle, God is all there is. Welcome, Dr. David.
Hello, everyone. Wow, I'm so honored to be here. About 2016, I was on the platform one Sunday and I was feeling overwhelmed because it was yet one more catastrophe in the world. And I know that you can relate to this. I know that we all have these meticulous sermons crafted and then something happens. And I believe it could have been the Pulse shooting. I don't know, but in Atlanta, we have an amazing gift of just a huge, beautiful melting pot of people of all ages, all ethnicities, all gender. And all of these catastrophes are very meaningful to the different sets of those individuals. And so it was my desire to be as compassionate and as comforting and as inspirational and appropriate with each of these things that were going on in the world as I possibly could. And I remember talking about this principle, the principle that we recite, the principle that we pray about, the principle that has been so much a part of our training and our life up until this point in time. And it was as if I heard a voice after I was saying about God is all that there is, or something correlating to that. This voice boomed back at me and say, David, do you really believe that? Now, mind you, I'm standing in front of a large congregation and I'm speaking, and I'm hearing this voice saying, do you really believe that? And I'm answering back. So there was a lot of mental chatter going on. And I said, I don't know. I just don't know. Today, I don't know. And it said, do you want to? And I said, above all else, I want to know wholeheartedly. In fact, I looked up the word integrity, and one of the etymology lineages of the word integrity is wholeness. I wanted to know with complete wholeness that this principle was true. And it was as if I was being offered an invitation to go on a journey of having whatever is necessary to crumble in order to really be solid, in order to really cultivate deep roots in this seminal teaching that we all abide by, because I wanted to know. I wanted to know not just for myself, but I wanted to know in terms of how can I be a better minister in these ongoing challenging times. And this was in 2016, I believe. And so even today, the same thing is happening, right? And so I went on a ride. I went on a journey that was a part of that vow or that willingness. Do I really want to know? Do I want to be less sage on the stage? And do I want to be this dutiful student that is going to wholeheartedly dive into whatever it takes in order to see the truth, the concretization, is that a word? Concretizement, the solidness of that. And so things begin to happen. There's so much of the story that I won't share at this time, but I will give you some of the things that came to me as a result of my willingness to go on this journey. One of them was about insanity. And I know we're all familiar with the term that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And what I was shown was that insanity is trying to force a singular dimensional answer to a multidimensional experience. And that took my breath away, because I realized that for me, so much of my teaching style and my approach with being with people was too much heavy-handed on the singular experience. There's no escaping the singular experience. This singular experience is what I call what we're sharing in right now. It's the plane of form. And the curriculum of the plane of form is duality. And I don't know of anything harder than duality. And here we are as human beings, souls in human instruments, agreeing to come and play one of the most difficult and challenging games, or to take one of the most difficult curriculums that could exist, to come from non-dual, God is all that there is, and be sort of cast into this chamber of dualism, which is this plane of form. It's a part of the part of the gig. And so we're here, so we might as well take the curriculum. And so we're taking it, and we're having to create this very sensitive and meticulous balance of that insanity, of trying to force a singular dimensional answer to a multidimensional experience. And I think most of us here can understand that, but I don't know that the average person who walks into our congregation can. We can talk about multidimensionality. We can talk about the fact that, as Ernest Holmes would say, you know, we are a part of a divine design. And so how do they themselves find a way in order to bring integrity to that principle as well? And I realized that's not my responsibility. My responsibility is for me to know it and to do the best job that I can to live it and to be it. And so in this plane of form, in duality, what I came to realize is that nothing is as it seems. Nothing is as it seems. The thing that I might deem a tragedy has a much greater depth and a bigger meaning to it in terms of this, which is multidimensionality. Like, I've struggled with things like worry. You know, we teach worry is the wasted use of our imagination. And I thought, but if everything is God, wouldn't worry be a part of God as well? And I began to dissect all of that and realize that the terminology that we use a lot of times about being triggered, that I decided not to use that word anymore. I decided to transform trigger into a signal. Because when I define trigger as something that I want to, again, prevent myself from happening, to be cautionary. But a signal is a way shower. A signal is something that is trying to direct me towards some other advancement. And so if I stopped looking at things as triggers and looked at them as signals, that's one step closer for me being able to bring integrity to the principle that God is all that there is. And I realized that that was teachable. That is something that I could teach a person and they could practice it. I wasn't saying deny the trigger, but when the trigger comes, breathe, take a moment and say, what if this is a signal? And if it is a signal, what is it wanting to show me? And that became a part of a teaching style very much centered around all of this idea of polarity, that nothing is as it seems. Worry, the same thing. I began to try to dissect, well, we all worry every single day. We all do it. But what if worry is not something to admonish ourselves over, but it's yet another opportunity to look at the polarity of that and go, what if worry is nothing more than a signal? Because the thing that I'm worrying about, for example, if I'm worrying about money, I can only worry about money because at one time I experienced sufficiency. I can't worry about something that I have never been in the same room with. You know, if there's a football team in Iowa and the sprinkler breaks in the gymnasium and they're not going to have uniforms for Friday night, I don't worry about that because that's not on my radar. So the things that I worry about are something that I had the polarity of. If I'm worried about safety, it's because at one time I have felt safe. And so I began to look at all of these things and to find a way to hopefully teach them in a way that they could be palatable, that they could understand, and that we could move together in an understanding that when we say God is all that there is, there's a requirement to that. And that requirement is, as we all know, to look beyond the surface, to look beyond the effect, and to understand and go exploring, as we've been sharing tonight, to explore what that means for us personally, even in the most traumatic of time. Thank you.
Sweet. Thank you. Thank you. You know, I heard, do I really want to know? You know, which may cost surrendering that less, the less being the sage on the stage, you know, to do what I am being called to be on this journey. And you've always been a way shower for that. You know, and I also want to thank you for initiating that, what I think is often a confusing conversation around the paradox that we run into as we're learning the principles and the value of using principle to explore them. You know, so the difference between triggers and signals, but how they are the sacred complements to one another, and then using both for our awakening. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, people. So now we move into the time for open dialogue. And we've got about 10 minutes. We're going to take a break, top of the hour. It will be for 5 minutes. And so your opportunity now is to ask any questions, share any insights based on the presentations of our first 3 panelists. So I am going to open the floor and hope I can figure out and find all the hands that go up in the right order. This is not my strong suit, so maybe Julia or someone else that's doing tech can help me here. Please raise your hands in the reaction, through the reaction button.
We have our first question from Sherry.
Yes. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening. My question is, so becoming a minister, I realize a lot of people, because I have a lot of people I know. those boundaries? How do I build up those boundaries? Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. The last part of the question we heard. How can you build up the boundaries? Can you speak a little closer, please, to your computer, Sherry?
Yes. Okay,
There
so
you-
can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, so I was saying that being in the church for like over 30 years, I have people who come to me, ask me questions, text me. How do I those boundaries now being a minister, or those all those people coming to me that they feel like they know me, and me being able to be true to myself and in integrity with them?
Thank you for your question. So Dr. Andrea, Dr. Patty, or Dr. David, would you like to address this? Somebody?
I would just add what I said in the beginning, Sherry, and maybe relieve yourself of the need to build the boundary and to just be there and let the main emphasis be on keeping your heart open. So in other words, don't anticipate a problem, but just show up with love. And then if something seemingly a problem does arise, can you trust that everything that you need to manage that, but to also be the witness to a lesson for you is also there.
And Sherry, I would also add that it's perfectly fine to retrain the people that you're experiencing wanting you as kind of friend, by simply saying, you know, I'm finding myself being very honest about where you are. Like, I'm finding myself in a different place now, and I don't have the time that I used to have to be able to really sit with you the way I would like to. And so, you know, I love you, I care about you, but we're going to have to make some appointments for us to be able to get together in a meaningful way, because my life is very, very full. And I invite you to, you know, give me a call, give me an email, and we'll set up a time. So that way you are in control of when you see them and when you don't. And it's really important as a minister to be able to take time away and have personal space. So, you know, being very careful about what time you make available.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is definitely a self-care question. I'm just wondering if Dr. Patty has anything you'd
Yes.
like to add that's different?
Yes, I would like to just piggyback on what has been said. You know, it's so easy to want to be there for everybody all at once, but to set those boundaries, set those appointments. It's interesting when you even affirm that in your prayer time. It's amazing how that space opens up for you. So I would just have you go back into maybe even increasing your beautiful spiritual practices, and then just setting your time so that you feel that breath of spirit breathing through you, and you can just ease with that, and you'll even be more present for the people that call upon you.
Thank you, Dr. Patty. Sherry, are you feeling complete with that?
Yes, I just wanted to add, you know, it's funny because there's phone bills, the emails, but now we have text. So people feel like, you don't answer the phone, and you don't answer my email, I'm gonna text you. I know you're getting my text. I'm like, oh my goodness. So yeah.
Yes, I know.
Thank
You
you.
can't get in the front door. You go around to the window. Thank you so much for your question.
Thank you.
Who would like to ask something else now? I know there's more questions out there. Or maybe an insight or an aha, anything, any takeaway that really spoke to you from what our panelists had to say. Oh my goodness, everyone's so quiet. Come on.
Okay.
There we go. Dr. Barbara, and then Reverend Hobbit.
Well, I probably have 100 questions, really, but I'm just struck with the clarity of the key things that each person said. And particularly, I'm in that same kind of lane where you use the challenge as the opportunity. And maybe this is because I have more challenges than I used to, or, I've chosen a life like that. But it's very satisfying, and it's very empowering to teach. I work with a lot of kids now, and to teach that all those things that are so scary. I love what David said about if you worry, it means you've had an experience of the other side, so you can feel what you're missing or not experiencing. And those kinds of things are so powerful for young people to know now that, I think we have to use everything and not be afraid of the places that are so scary in their lives and bring up so much fear in ours, because it truly is grace to be there. It's truly grace to be able to be with people at that level, especially young people at those moments where everything seems absolutely hopeless and helpless. So I love that, leaning into the challenge to transform our response. So I call that peace first in my world. I put peace first, and then I can do that. Thank you.
Dr.
This is a
Barber.
great program.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, Reverend Hobbit, we have time for just one more question, or maybe two, before we go on the break.
I'd like to ask Dr. Alt if he has any of that material, which I thought was very elegant. Is that written down anywhere on a blog or website, a book, or anywhere we could maybe take a second peek at that? Because it was really a gem. Thank you.
It floats in all different types of binders and notes and upcoming books. But I tell you what, if there's anything that I can support you with in terms of supplying that, I'd be happy to speak to you offline, and we'll make that happen.
It was very elegant. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you for your question, Hobbit. One last question or insight, sharing. All right. I'll pause because sometimes I move things on too quickly. So, there, see. All right, Madam Tracy Brown.
So knowing that we only have 2 minutes, I'm just curious, for these 3 ministers, what's your take right now at this stage on inclusion? And what have you learned when we talk about our communities having so many different kinds of people? What's your 1 or 2 sentence advice to ministers and leaders about applying our spiritual principle and being inclusive?
Thank you for the question. So you have another fire round question. Please begin, whoever is ready.
I'd like to just chime in. Tracy, it's good to see you. And my answer to that is, and I guess I received this from my Lakota Sioux family and friends, that we all have red hearts, and that to be able to be able to have introspection into ourselves, to be able to stop judging ourselves. When we can stop judging ourselves, we can stop judging everyone else in our world. And what a world this would be. And I loved your book, What Stained Glass. It's about loving. Thank you.
Inclusion is a lifelong process. I don't think there's an arrival to full inclusion, and it's a personal responsibility. I walk in my neighborhood, and I live in a politically mixed neighborhood, and we're in an election cycle, and there's all kinds of signs, and I find the ire and the rage that comes sometimes when I walk by a yard, and I'm amazed at the veracity of my non-inclusive nature. And at the same time, I'm working on letting that be my teacher, to say, this is where the work is. And it's hard. It's hard. Ram Dass used to say, take what's on your plate and transform it till it feeds you. And I'm still trying to find a way that those who in this singular dimensional experience are the appearance of harm for others, I'm trying to find how to transform that. And I don't have an answer.
Yeah, I would also agree with that, David. It's amazing how the heart longs to recognize the oneness that's behind all things. And I learned from one of my teachers, Tracy Brown, that oneness doesn't mean sameness. And so, trying to deal with the ferocity of divisiveness that, especially in the last 8 or 9 years, has really come forward, has not only broken my heart, but it's broken me open to try to understand how to use these beautiful teachings to reach to people very unlike me, and to not just wish for inclusion, but actually move in that direction. And it's very challenging. Like so many places, our community is very divided between urban and rural points of view. And we're very fortunate to be working in our community, in my center, with the Lummi Nation in looking at ways how we can understand that we aren't the same, but that underneath it all, we can love one another and right the wrongs that have occurred, first in our own minds and hearts, and then in every action taken. It's a journey.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Tracy.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Tracy, for that question. I know this is dear to your heart, and it is your life's work. So we're coming up now for our break time. We're going to play a little Jack Fowler music for y'all. Doctors Andrea and Patty need to leave us. They both are going to teach practitioner class. So let's thank them for their powerful wisdom teachings tonight. And we'll be back at 10 minutes after the hour. So grab a cup of tea. For those of you who want to stay on, we can continue the chat if you'd like, but we'll play a little music first for a couple of moments. Thank you.
In the silence there is peace. In the silence there is unspoken joy. In the silence there's release from a world full of chaos and noise. So I wait for these precious moments when I hear all that could never be said, and right here in this holy silence I find God, I find myself. In the silence there is peace. In the silence there is unspoken joy. In the silence there's release from a world full of chaos and noise. So I wait for these precious moments when I hear all that could never be said, and right here in this holy silence I find God, I find myself. So I wait for these precious moments when I hear all that could never be said, and right here in this holy silence I find God, I find God, I find myself. In the silence there is peace. In the silence there is unspoken joy. In the silence there's release from a world full of chaos and noise.
Hi, everyone. We've got a minute here, but if there was a person who had a last minute question or who just wants to share an aha right now, please do. And then we'll begin with our second panel when more people come back from the break. Reverend Faith, you're on mute.
I was just really struck, excuse me, by Reverend David's statement of, if we say this, we have to satisfy it. And I think if we satisfy our principles, I think we will really be powerful in the world, and we will be out there for people to see that we are satisfying what we believe. And that's it. I just really took that to heart.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to begin part two, and our panelists for this session are Dr. Peter Weldis, Dr. David Bruner, and Reverend Patrick Pollard. And so to all three of you, thank you for your patience. And now it's your turn. So you start with your answer, 1 minute answer to the second fire round question. Let's see. Ministry is a lifelong calling, asking each of us to teach by how we live. Now, this can lead us to feeling like we're under a microscope, the one with the spiritual solution and always available. So here's your question. How do you renew yourself and give yourself the grace to grow authentically and sometimes messily within your community as the spiritual leader? So Dr. Petra, would you like to go first, please?
Sure, thanks. It's a great question. Something that I have struggled with my whole ministry, truthfully. How I renew myself is I realized many years ago that I had 5 weeks of vacation in my letter of call, and I was lucky if I took 3. So what I did was I asked for 8 weeks of vacation, hoping that I would maybe take 4 or 5. And what I learned to do was to take an entire month off in August, which grew my community in ways that I had no idea it was going to, but really allowed me to draw a hard boundary. I'm not available. I would go to the mountains and be off the grid. Now it's a little more hard with 5G. Ooh, man, I've gotten calls and texts on the top of a mountain. And so that has been a huge thing I take all 8 weeks of my vacation to give myself the grace to grow authentically and sometimes messily within the community is I fess up. I don't ever try to rationalize something I've done. I don't ever try to make excuses. I just say, wow, I really messed up. That was a mistake. Or I'm so sorry. Or, and I talk about it on a Sunday morning. I have in the last 10 years become more and more authentic with my own process on a Sunday morning, in my classes, in our Wednesday night meditation. And it gives people permission. It gives people permission, and it has hugely given me permission to live in my own perfection-free zone. Thank you, Dr. Andrea, for that. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Dr. David, how would you answer that question?
Thank you for having me with this group. I'm really moved and grateful. It's good to see you, Nadine.
Thank you.
How I would answer that is, for me, I blocked out 2 days a week always that are off. I don't work. I don't work on Fridays and I don't work on Saturdays. My mate works in corporate America, so we have a 1-day weekend, and we have had for 15 years a 1-day weekend. So Saturday is really important for my mate, for my family, and for me. But that is actually the biggest thing, is take your days off. And then I would use 1 day specifically for writing a message or a sermon. So really, I was only dealing with church stuff 4 days a week. Anyway, that's the theory. I don't know if it ever worked out that way. I'm not sure. I'm sure Mauricio would have a different perspective, but that's always been the intention. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And Reverend Patrick, you're on mute.
No longer on mute.
No.
I'm so glad you called me on that, because I had given some thought about it even before tonight. I had been thinking about that, and I wrote something, an acrostic to myself about myself. And it's about how I view myself. First of all, I said life. I took life, the word life, made an acrostic of that, and you will get some of the answers in some of what I'm going to read to you, because I don't remember every single word, but I remember writing it down, and I really wanted to share this with you. So L for life, the state of an organism characterized by process of abilities to mobilize, grow, respond, act, and react. That's the physical, mental part of myself, a chemical process of all, it's a chemical process of living organisms, which result in growth. It's about light, love, liberty, in using the law evidenced by its adaptation to the environment in which it finds itself. And to me, that was the key right there, part of it. Secondly, impeccability, the I in life. Impeccability. So I learned to live impeccably with an inquisitive, inventive identity using the law of involution. Involution was a word I learned when I came to the science of mind. Involution, evolution. Using the law of involution with exuberant excellence. I have to find myself digging deep into how I create evolution, because involution is what brings evolution. So we could bring into our lives a new way of being by involution. In other words, going from inside out, not from outside in. And now F for faithfully, facing each day with fervent fortitude, formidable fire, and unqualified faith in the face of unfounded fear. Amazing, amazing, amazing of self-analysis, recognizing this is where I want to stand. This is who I am internally. I need to learn to live that now externally. And the F, that was F. E for enchantingly, because I had to bring something delightful into the equation. So I put under E, enthusiastically creating a spell of delight and wonder, not in exile exiguously, but with exuberance and excitement for each precious moment. When I practice this, it really makes me feel alive. I feel like, hey, I'm not subject to external stuff anymore. It's about my inside out, not my outside in.
Thank you so much. And I know people are going to want to have that. So maybe if you write that down and send that as an email to Reverend Glenda or Dr. Ian, and then we can maybe post that when we post the recording, because I know people are going to want it. Thank you very much, Reverend Patrick.
You're welcome. I'll send that to Reverend Ian.
Thank you. That'd be perfect.
Yes.
Thank you. So now we begin with our next three presentations. Again, thank you for your patience. We begin with Dr. Petra, and so I'd like to introduce her first. So Dr. Petra has been walking a spiritual path for over 40 years and empowered countless students into a richer spiritually grounded life. She is a dynamic and inspiring speaker and teacher, presenting in spiritual and leadership settings nationally and internationally. She writes for various national magazines and has co-authored the Joyous Freedom, Joyous Living, and Joyous Abundance journals with Dr. Christian Sorensen. He leads retreats on spiritual living, community development, and leadership training. Dr. Petra has a passion for youth, service, inclusion, peace, environment, conscious leadership, global transformation, and expanding consciousness. She is currently serving as co-spiritual director at CSL Dallas, a center for spiritual living. Dr. Petra has chosen to speak on three things tonight. The first of which is organization as spiritual practice. The second, learning to be a leader through conflict resolution and group dynamics. And the third, pledge programs and asking for money. Please help me welcome Dr. Petra.
All right. right. Yay. Thank you so much, Glenda and Nadine. Thank you so much. So I'm so happy to be here. And actually, all three topics merge under the same thing. I started my first community actually outside of Seattle, Washington in 1984. And grew it moderately successfully. And 7 years later, I burned out spectacularly. Actually, I burned out so spectacularly that unfortunately, my lovely community didn't survive more than a few years after me. And I went into the cabin in the wood, to my cabin in the woods, and I wondered what in the world I was doing. How did I think I had had a call to ministry, and how badly it had gone, and how poorly I felt like I had behaved. And what I realized in that process is that I was given a picture of ministry that didn't fit me. And so as I was invited to speak here in Elderspeak, which was kind of an interesting title, I really had to, and to people especially new to the ministry, what I want to talk about is the things that I didn't know. And what I didn't know is that not everybody's a pastoral minister. And it took me 10 years to discover that I'm not. I'm not a compassionate, caring person. I'm a put a foot in your back person. And I am fundamentally an educator. I follow the Jnana Yoga path, which is the path of the intellect, which is lovingly called that you can't get there from your path, which is to a certain extent true. Although I will tell you that it is in the deep and profound practice of inquiry into what the hell our teachings actually are. So not just integrity of is God is all there is. David, I love that. I've spent a year meditating just on the thought of infinity. And I've spent another year meditating on what does love mean? What not love like human love, not compassion, not caring, but love like in the self-givingness of spirit. And what does that mean when I want something out there to love me? And so diving really deep into, do I even have a clue as to what our teachings are? And just becoming real about the fact that I'm just not that. I'm not that. Whatever that was they tried to train me into as a minister, I'm not that. And my mentor minister, bless his heart, Reverend Dr. Jim Munson, who I adored, and he just about adopted me as one of his daughters. He showed me very dysfunctional expression of ministry. And there was, I can't wait to hear what David's going to talk about in terms of the drama triangle. Oh my God, drama in the center. And I grew up with plenty of drama. So when I really began owning the fact that I'm just, I'm just a little different. I tend to be outside of the norm. I'm socially awkward. I'm not chatty, and people don't perceive me as nice. And I'm just a little weird. I'm just always a little weird. And what I learned is that I have a huge tolerance for people that are weird, which then I discovered was actually all of us. And that we're all a little weird. And so when I started recognizing that my community was filled with funny bunnies, that's what I call all of us, we're all funny bunnies. And I loved, Andre, what you said, when all of a sudden somebody started feeding back to me and would go, well, I'm just a funny bunny. And so there you go. I fell in love with my people in a whole different way. I fell in love with the community, and they taught me to fall in love with myself. I stopped needing for people to be a certain way. I stopped needing for them to be like me. I stopped needing for them to do things the way that I did. And let me just tell you that it annoyed the shit out of me. And I knew that every time that was a place that I had to go to learn something. I loved what you said, David. I talk about triggers as activated. I'm activated. Well, all that energy has to go somewhere. Well, let's have it go into learning. So I became passionate about leadership, and I realized that if you want loving and caring, right? I send you to Patty Generous and Tracy Brown and some of the other practitioners. That's why I have a lot of practitioners. They do all that part, and I'm so grateful. Right? I want to get into the mess. I want to get into the messiness of relationships, and there's nothing better to do that in an organization and in volunteering in communities. which when I first got into ministry, I said I would never do. I would never have communities, never have committees, never have committees. Committees. And I can't even imagine not having them now. I can't do anything without having a small group of 2 or 3 people get together. What do you think? Oh, you think that? Wow, what an interesting idea. Would never have thought about that. And so my spiritual practice, as weird as it sounds, has been growing an organization, learning how to deal with staff, talk about boundaries, learning how to hold people accountable in the most loving way that I know how, learning how to be in a group of people and deliberately asking for them, looking for people that were different from each other and bringing them together and say, let's do this event or create this thing, or what do you think about that? All of that became my spiritual practice, because every single time I was being pushed and grown and stretched. And am I really practicing the principles, or have I just decided, well, I'm the boss and this is my agenda and you have to do what I want because I'm actually the senior minister? But now I did occasionally feel that way. But then I got grown over and over and over and over again. And I had to learn, what does it mean? What does it actually mean to be a leader?
Okay, I don't know what happened to
And a
it.
vision caster. What does that really mean? What's my place in that? Which is not to tell people how to do stuff. It's to give us an organizing direction that everybody can get on board, but the lane has to be, my screen isn't big enough for how wide the lane has to be. And as long as we're all kind of moving in the same direction, I don't care if you're way over there or way over there, or you're right here, we're this way. And there are actually things that aren't this way. And you want to go do that? Great, go do that. But this doesn't happen, it's not here. Because we actually have a teaching and we actually are doing a thing called spiritual community. And if it's not kind of in that, then that's okay. It's okay. Just go do it someplace else. Go find another not-for-profit or go do it at a college, and it's okay, because this is, and so the lane is really big, but it's not everything. And I learned that if we try to be all things to all people, we're nothing to nobody. And I am a people pleaser from the word go. I mean, I was the oil that tried to smooth the waters in my childhood. I was like, everybody had to love me and it all had to be nice, because I lived in a very volatile household. And so dealing with conflict then in all of these groups was agonizing, because I thought my job was to fix it all and make it nice and pray it away and all those kinds of things. So if you take nothing from this little 10-minute thing that I'm doing right here, if you take nothing from it, I highly hope that you will look up forming, storming, norming, and performing as the stages of group process. That has saved my ass so many times when I have realized that I and a group have moved into storming, which is a natural part of group process. But we tend to scapegoat people. It's where we get into the drama. We start creating allies. We start having hallway conversations, and we are no longer present in the room. We're no longer telling the truth. We're no longer holding ourselves in accountable, and we are not in an integrity with our teachings or with what it means to be in a spiritual community. And learning how to move through the storming process was gold for me, and it grew me up. Oh, you want to talk about messily? Oh, it grew me up messily inside committees and in the larger, in our larger organization. But that was all that, the sandpaper that was rubbing off all the jagged edges in ways that were, a lot of times painful, but also then at the end, like miraculous things would happen, and people would go off and they would get, 6-figure incomes and say they learned everything that they knew about leading from CSL Dallas. They start nonprofits and they go build their own businesses, and they're like doing the deal in the world. They're contributing their light and their joy in the world in these amazing ways. And because we rubbed up against each other in spiritual community and in the organization, in the practice. And so you know, our job is to involve people in the caring, compassionate, which is our sanghas and circles, and home study groups, and to involve them in education, which is my #1 love. And the third thing is to involve them in volunteering, because it grows them up. And I'll say the very last thing that grew me up, that was probably the hardest thing for me to do, was one, to get a pledge program. In 1998, we decided to get a pledge program, and it's the best thing that has, it's the thing that has grown me so much, by learning that there are other people that love the organization as much as I do. And it's not my job to run everything. I have a job. It's vision caster, leader, cheerleader, and foot in your back, and teacher. But I don't have all those other jobs. And I successfully did not ask personally for money for 30 years. I did it in the pledge program, which taught me that there were a lot of people who loved CSL Dallas, and that they weren't giving it to me. They were giving it to the community, and I could just get over myself. And the first time, just not too long ago, we did an expansion, and I asked our largest contributors, I said, I need to practice on you. I've never asked for money. For this large amount of money. Oh yeah, occasionally $10,000 here, $20,000 there. But, and so we went dinner, and they knew that I was going to ask them for money, and that I was practicing. And so I just asked them for $200,000, and they said, oh, okay. It's like, well, how much money have I left on the table for years and years and years? And afterwards they said, how'd I do? You know, I said, how'd I do? And they were like, yeah, it was good. We liked this, we liked this, and you could have tweaked that. And oh my God, it just, you know, every time there's a fear, boom, the fear is it's the place where I'm not trusting, and I'm not practicing, and I'm not whatever it is. I can't treat the fear away. I have to follow the fear, and just don't try to be like any other minister you have ever seen or done. Don't let anybody fool you into thinking that there's a blueprint. Be the minister that you came here to be. That's what I have to say.
Oh my gosh, Dr. Petra, thank you for letting it out and making it okay to get into the mess. You know, I heard take your time to dive deep into the questions that take courage for you to ask of yourself, and just be yourself and grow that, and stretch your I am. Stretch your I am. Whew, thank you. And now for our next presenter, Dr. David Bruner. So Dr. David is the spiritual leader at the Center for Spiritual Living, San Jose, California. He has an every kind of guy style combined with an irreverent sense of humor, and he's known and loved for his practical, often unorthodox approach to spirituality. Now, Dr. David is about to retire from pulpit ministry, and he's got in big letters in his bio, Sunday, December 18th, 2022. So Dr. David has chosen to speak to us tonight on EQ, emotional quotient, drama triangle, and practices for extraordinary living. Dr. David, take it away.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Hello, everyone. I'm super happy to be here with you tonight or this afternoon, wherever this finds you. It was so fun just sitting here watching Dr. Petra. It occurred to me, oh, wait, I'm next, but I wanted her just to keep talking. So my apologies to those of you who were following her like I was. It's very clear to me that none of us actually needs more information. To me, I think every one of us knows where to find information. But for me personally, what I'm hungry for all the time is a real experience of these concepts and ideas. I really want to see where my spirituality shows up in my relationship, or in my board of trustees meetings, or on the pulpit. And mostly it shows up consciously when I'm in trouble, when I behave badly, or I've broken somebody's heart, or I've stepped on someone's toes. And that's when Science of Mind really comes to life for me. It was important for me 23 years ago when I started here at San Jose. It was really important to me that I not be a fraud, It was really, and it still is very important to me, that I don't say or teach something that I myself am not honoring and using and applying to the best of my ability. And so Science of Mind for me is very alive. I've memorized so much of it, but I want to pull myself out of my head and just talk to some of the puppies that might be in the room. If I had a wish for you, it would be that it's probably the same kind of wish every father and mother ever gave to younger generations. May you not have to hurt people as badly as I did to discover how good you can be. May you experience self-forgiveness that emerges spontaneously and quickly and without end. For me, in my last 23 years, the most important tools, in addition to my Science of Mind toolbox, has been emotional intelligence, being aware of the drama triangle, and what I learned to call practices for extraordinary living. Those are those things up there. In a nutshell, probably one of the first mature things I ever did as a minister was learning emotional intelligence, basically 4 steps. I don't need to teach you them. But the first 2 is what really has saved me and probably caused less damage than I would have caused. One of them is to be self-aware. And the second thing is to be self-managing. High emotional intelligence is 4 steps. The first 2 being be self-aware. For example, I remember when email didn't exist. And I remember when email suddenly became a mass way of communicating. And I remember not knowing really how to manage it well. So when I received an email that poked at me or jabbed at me, I remember just firing off replies, not caring, that I was leaving a trail of wounded people behind me. But I learned something. In emotional intelligence, in being self-aware, I learned that when I'm poked, my mouth gets very, very dry. So now when I receive a communication, a phone message, a text message, and I'm about to reply and my mouth goes dry, the second step of emotional intelligence comes to play, and that is, Bruner, hands off the keyboard. Back away. Back away. Let me put that aside. The drama triangle has been hugely helpful for me, mostly because I've been living on it and didn't know what a drama triangle is. Forgive me for being repetitive. Probably every one of you knows it. You probably see it daily, but in a nutshell, for a drama triangle to exist, there have to be 3 roles, and those 3 roles have to be populated. There has to be a victim, there has to be a perpetrator, and there has to be a rescuer. And the problem with the drama triangle is your roles will switch around. Like if I perceive someone as a victim and I go in to rescue them, then I must be perceiving someone else as a perpetrator. If I go after the perpetrator, I will often feel victimized because I will then create a whole series of events. Now, I want to pause that and bracket that. There are people who are hurt and disenfranchised and victimized. But I've learned in my 23 years here in San Jose, if I don't perceive them as a victim, then I'm not going to help them find a perpetrator, and they don't make me the rescuer. And when I pull myself away from the drama triangle, that's when I see the full force of Science of Mind can be used and comes to play. Because I'm no longer looking backwards at what happened, I'm looking forward as to what could happen. So let me wipe those 2 aside and just say, practices for extraordinary living, for me, they are be integrity, be peaceful, be powerful, be courageous, be inspiring, and also be charisma. And in a nutshell, we've heard the word integrity tonight a few times, but for me, I'm a boater and we have a boat, and my hull has to have integrity or it will not float. You can't have a little integrity. I mean, even the tiniest crack can cause a boat to sink. So for me, integrity is the wholeness of my word. And this, for me, I link integrity with prayer being effective. So I know a lot of folk will use integrity as morality, like you're late, you're out of integrity. What they're really saying is you're late, you're a bad person. But when I say I'm late, what I'm saying is it doesn't work. My life doesn't work. I'm not keeping my word. Now, if I'm speaking my word in Science of Mind, if I'm taking a stand and speaking as, let's say, Jesus, or if I'm speaking as God, but I don't keep my own word, it's not a surprise when my prayer doesn't work. So if I say I'm going to the gym and I don't go to the gym, I say I'm going to not be a dick in a board meeting and I'm a dick in a board meeting, then I'm not keeping my word. And therefore, it shouldn't surprise me when my prayer doesn't work. Being peaceful means giving up the interpretation that there's something wrong here, even when there's something wrong here. Being powerful for me is asking for what you want and taking what you get, not asking for what you want and complaining about what you get. Also being powerful is looking for win-win. In my relationship, Mauricio, my mate, he has actually informed me that we don't compromise. Because he says, who should compromise their happiness, David, you or should I? Instead, we're always a win-win or a no-go. So we're always looking for a win-win, win-win-win. And to me, that's being powerful. To me, being courageous is saying, I will not be moved by Putin. I will not be moved by the economy. I will not be moved by COVID. I will not be moved by the division. I will not be moved by my angry emotions. To me, that's practicing courage. Inspiring is living your life such that people are moved to want to do better. And finally, being charisma. Charisma is not something you can have because charisma is a state of being. And I learned something about charisma that really inspires me. Charisma is living your life such that people have the experience they've been seen by you. Like they've been noticed by you. And being charismatic is you're up to something. Like you are up to something. That's charismatic. Up to something and not on your way somewhere. So that's what I would offer in my 23 years, in addition to your Science of Mind toolbox. Those three things have really come to play and it's worked beautifully. So thank you for the generosity of your attention.
Thank you, Dr. David. What I took away here was, may you experience self-forgiveness quickly and without end. Keep your word. Ask for what you want and take what you get. I'm going to have to work on that one. Do not be moved by divisiveness. Sustain your hull so others in your presence can be seen. Thank you. And so next up, and last but not least, Reverend Patrick Pollard. A native of Trinidad and Tobago, Reverend Patrick came to live in the US in 1966. During a business trip, he discovered religious science in Dallas, Texas. After returning to Los Angeles, he enrolled in his first Science of Mind class in, wait for it, 1972. In 1986, he graduated from the Holmes College of Consciousness Studies and was ordained in 1990. Since 1986, Reverend Patrick served as senior minister in Yucaipa, California, assistant minister in Huntington Beach, California, senior minister in Eureka, California, and senior minister in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where he retired in 2008. He then moved with his wife to Connecticut, and guess what? He came out of retirement and founded the Connecticut Center for Spiritual Living in 2010, where he served as founding minister for 11 years before retiring again in 2021. So throughout his 35 years of ministry, he also participated in several Centers for Spiritual Living home office programs, including many oral panels, ethics committee, leadership planning committee, annual Silmar retreat and conferences. You get the picture. This is one wonderful longtime minister who was bestowed the Living Treasure Award from the United Clergy of Religious Science in 2008. He has chosen to speak today on what prevails most in a successful ministry. Please help me welcome Reverend Patrick.
Oh, I forgot to unmute myself, and thank you very much. Nadine, you have really put me in a spot here so that I can be what I want to be anytime I want to be, and I've always been there, just not waking up to it all the time. But to know oneself is the most valuable research one can ever take. The most worthwhile research anyone can take is to find out who you are and who you are being in the world that you find yourself. Because when you don't do that, you are missing out on the juice in life, the joy of life, the fire of life, the love of life, the harmony of life. All of those things come as a result of really finding you, because you are divine. You're made in the image and likeness of. Who is that person that's made in the image and likeness of? Who is that person? Is it the person you think you are, or is it the person other people think you are? Discover that person. And you know something? You will find life so sweet that you will say to yourself, wow. I was at a game yesterday. I play 3 times a week, pickleball or tennis or both. And there was a guy sitting behind me waiting for his turn to get on the court. And he said, what's going on in your life? I said, everything wonderful is happening. I said, I have nothing to complain about. I really cannot say there is one thing that I have to complain about in my life. I am happy, joyful, fulfilled, filled full, and peaceful. And I am here because I love to be where I am in this very moment, waiting right now to put that paddle in my hand, to put the racket in my hand. We have to live fully out of our love, out of our wonderfulness, out of our peace, out of who we were made. If we were made in the image and likeness of God, do you know the image and likeness of God? We can't describe that. We could try to live in our understanding of that, but our understanding is still limited by the fact that we are not yet in the experience of the infinite. We are still on a finite level, but our final level is more than just stone and rock. We create stone and rock. We manifest objects, manifestations, because we are made just like what made us. And you know what made us? Love beyond our understanding, peace beyond our comprehension, joy that makes us bubble over. That is the presence. You see, I have decided to really become more and more the person from the inside and live more of that outside inside person. I want to share with you something that I really believe is worth every single moment of who you are. Understand that life is not just coming into the physical form and living for so many years or weeks or months or minutes and then passing out, and that's not the end of life. Life cannot die. Life is from God. God cannot die. Therefore, whatever God makes cannot die. It can transcend, can transfer, but it cannot die. Ending is not a divine intention. We were never born and we shall never die. In other words, we never began because we are made in the image and the likeness of that one. When I take that concept and really begin to put it into what I create in the world, you see behind me, that thing with the ball on the top, that came from the ministers, United Clergy Ministers. The clock came from the church that I served the longest in. And the circle, of course, you recognize as the science of mind, the symbol of the science of mind. As I said before, life is a process of living, not just a process of living, which results in growth. It's about light, it's about love, it's about liberty, it's about using the power of the law of God as evidenced by its adaptation to the environment we find ourselves in. And that, to me, calls us to live impeccably with an inquisitive, inventive identity, using the law of evolution and exuberance and elegance and excellence in this thing called life. Who are you? How are you living? What really is all this about? Why are we doing this? When you discover that, you know what? You never get enough of it. Never get enough of it. So face each day with fervent fortitude, formidable fire, and unqualified faith in the face even of unfounded fear, because fear is just forgetting that everything is all right. F-E-A-R. Fear is forgetting that everything is all right. Live enthusiastically, creating a spell of delight and wonder, not in exile exugiously, but with exuberance and excitement for each precious moment. You are not here just to be an observer. You are here to be a contributor. What are you doing? I hope you understand. I'm speaking all these words purely out of love, because what I love about you is that you can do so much better. Your best is yet to come. We are here to be the best that we can possibly be, because we are better than we are in this moment. We are always, always advancing. God love you. I love you. And so it is. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Patrick. To know oneself and know who you are being in the world, you find yourself not, so you don't miss the juice, right? And the love of life, that kind of love that's beyond our comprehension in this moment now.
That's right.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, this has been a rich meal, and now we have an opportunity for open dialogue once again. So let me just do that. You're probably deep in thought, but maybe some of you have a question or two top of mind. So let's open the floor again, shall we? Remember, use your raise your hand in the reaction button, through the reaction button, and we shall see it. Deep thinkers are we? What moved you? Okay, I know, Dr. Petra. Oh my God, I have known this woman, but I've never known her. I had no idea that's who you were. I am just excited. Oh, Reverend Marcia Megapore. Question.
Yes, I do have a question, and I can say very, very lovingly, Nadine, that I know Petra and I feel very much the same and very blessed to have had her as one of my mentors over the years. But my question tonight is for my beloved Dr. David, who over the years I have observed and loved and embraced and laughed with and found to be such an authentic, real person, as he said of himself, that if he's not authentic or he doesn't want to be a fraud. But my question, David, really has to do with that authenticity, observing you in past years and then seeing you this evening. Can you say that your authenticity, or how might your authenticity have shifted over the years, if such?
Thank you, Marcia. I think, you know, I had an awakening. I had an awakening maybe 12, 13, 14 years ago when I finally saw that my little temper tantrums were creating damage. Like it went from being conceptual to being, I had real heartache, and I stopped liking. Well, I think to answer your question, what I would say is it finally got exhausting trying to clean up the messes that I was making. And it was so much easier to just slow down and be quiet and watch, and to bite my tongue until blood would come out the corner of my mouth. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Petra waved her hands up in the air, and I know that she too would probably say something similar. Petra, if you don't mind, you could please answer that question also.
I really can only echo what David said. If I'm going to live in integrity, and if I'm going to stand up on a Sunday morning and in a class over and over and over and over and say the things that I say and teach what I teach, over the years, those teachings of David Alt talked about having the conversation is, are you doing this? Look at what you're telling that person, but look at what you did last night. Did you live this? Right? I mean, you can only, for me personally, I can only have that dichotomy for so long, and I am forced into my own growth and integrity. And I got tired of cleaning up my messes.
Thank you, David. Thank you both. And I will say to David, when I was talking about observing your authenticity, I never really saw that period of time where you may seem to have thought you caused trouble or whatever. And if you did, bless your heart for being authentic in that way. So thank you so very much for being who you both are.
Thank you, Marcia, for that question.
That's very generous of you, Marcia. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have Reverend Teresa Rambold. You're on mute. You can't get it? Okay. Anyone else have a question? Well, oh, there you are. Okay.
Sorry about that, Nadine.
That's okay.
Yeah, Dr. David, just one thing that comes to mind regarding your authenticity and forgiveness of self. One of the things I did with a very similar thing was flipping the word forgiveness to giving for. Give for authenticity, give for opening my heart to this way of being, and give for this relationship having a new beginning. So just give for, rather than forgiveness that maybe something went sideways, it's giving for a new beginning. So I just wanted to mention that because that really helped me with my own forgiveness.
Thank you.
Okay.
Scanning the gallery. Anyone else would like to share? Thank you, Teresa, for that question. I'm not question, but observation. Thank you. Do we have anyone else? Reverend Rafe, welcome.
Thank you. And for no in particular, or each of them, how do you distinguish between authenticity and vulnerability?
That's a great question, Rafe, and I love that question. For me, authenticity is telling the truth about who I am, telling the truth about what I see, telling the truth about how I'm practicing, allowing you to see all of me. Vulnerability for me is exposing my heart. And that's, you see, I have to stop there because that's something that's really hard for me to do. I feel very vulnerable every time I give a talk on a Sunday morning, and I feel like I'm sharing something really powerful about my own spiritual practice. I'm sharing something about my heart. And that's when, for me personally, I feel most vulnerable. I feel for me, vulnerability is an it's exposing. And I am practicing not defending or guarding.
Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. And since I live in Silicon Valley, it's a requirement that the first thing you do when you get a question is go to the internet. So I just did a cut and paste from St. Google. Authenticity and vulnerability go hand in hand. In order to express your ideas and needs honestly, you have to expose yourself, which in turn carries the risk of getting hurt.
Yeah. Nice. All right. We're just, we're just over the hour now. We're going to close out with a chamber prayer, but if there was one more question here that moves us in the direction that these last questions have moved us, perhaps.
I would just like to say thank you for this this gathering. It's lovely.
Thank you.
And thanks for the invitation to participate. Truly honored.
How often are you going to have the Elderspeak?
Well, Noel, we intend to do it annually. So based on the responses we got tonight, I think people are interested again. And so that's a real blessing. So just before we close then with the chamber prayer, I would like to extend my gratitude to everyone who participated, the Retired Ministers Committee, the panelists, CSL support, Kathleen Sibley at Home Office, Julia Mattis in Columbia. I have to say that I'm very emotional for this gathering because it is my tribe. We are deep thinking, loving souls, all of us who've gathered with our life's work to contribute to a world that works for everyone, beginning with ourselves. And to those puppies, as David said, this is your family, it's your tribe. So welcome in, I know our work is to reach in, but reach out too, because support is everywhere, especially in the places you most least expect it to be. So thank you all, bless you. We'll see you next year, and please open to receive from our panelists, our elders, your elders, this beautiful chamber prayer.
Beholding the one, beholding the one, beholding the one. I know.
There is one life, God's life.
and celebrate
There is movement upon us now that opens all
that
minds and
place
hearts to
within all
receive
of us that
Christ.
feels at home. That
There's a
place that
place where
knows beyond a
softness
shadow of
is,
a
a
doubt
life where
that not
goodness and
only
love
do they matter,
resides. First and
but their soul's
foremost,
incarnation is a
there's
divine and
only
perfect
this
place.
idea of God
It
and
is
God is
so
us and God is one, all
uniquely
is
and
moving outward,
meticulously designed for the work
where
that
there
we are
is
called to
nothing,
do.
no obstruction, only openness
And
and
so
calm
now, in
to the
this
love and life of God.
understanding
So we
and
bless,
this
pass the
celebration
word, the license,
of that
beautiful
moment,
legacy keepers
we know that
that are
each and every
coming
person
through
who
us,
takes
that are
up the
surrounding
road in
us.
the mantle of
And we
ministry does so
open to the beauty of
from
the souls that are
pure
here,
desire
knowing that each and every
to
one
now to
discovers,
be, to
explores,
have,
creates the
and to
right work
allow that which is
in divine
God's
right timing.
to represent
And
them.
so I say yes,
And
I
their
receive.
journey is meticulous and perfect.
We let go, we surrender
so
to the
it is.
divine wisdom and timing of God. And so it is. Amen.
Stay in the grace.